Hi everyone and welcome along. We are at the desk in the studio ready to do some painting. But before I tell you what we're doing today, I had some really exciting post. I have finally got the first copy of my book, Draw Your Way Botanical Watercolour, in my hands. And I'm so excited to show you a little bit more when we get going. But if you haven't already pre-ordered your copy of my first ever reverse colouring book, then you can head to the episode notes below, pre-order yourself a copy, and also we have a free download of a page from this so you can try before you buy. So that's very exciting. But the other thing is we had such an amazing response to the tutorials last week. We had the Greek house with all the shadows, little shadow masterclass, and then we had our hydrangea vase, and wow, it went crazy, so thank you so much. And if you haven't had a look at it, just head to the channel, you'll find it there right up on the Flowers and Foliage playlist. But it made me realise that we paint all sorts of really beautiful things on the channel, but sometimes it's a really good idea to go back to basics and actually look at some techniques, because I get so excited about painting beautiful things, but I realise we're all painters of different abilities, coming to this at different times in our lives. Maybe some of the words we use, you're like, I don't really know what layering means, I don't know what wash is, and all this kind of stuff. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to break down a particular technique I use a lot, but I don't tend to talk about in great technical detail, and that is glazing. So we're going to demystify what that means. I've got a beautiful little chart I've made for you, so you can download that as well, have a go at home and find out all about what on earth glazing is. So grab your paints and let's get started. Right then, let's open up Draw Your Way Botanical Watercolour. So the thing I love first, just in opening it up, is we've got this lovely little helpful guide of just a bit of inspiration, whether you're drawing what you can see, what you can't see, because what I love is the imagination that's going to take hold. Yes, this is inspired by flowers, but you've seen when Ant came and drew with me, he saw some Star Wars spaceships and a manta ray and all sorts, and I saw an elephant, so it's certainly not limiting, but that's what the framework we've done for sort of just initial inspiration, because you're also so welcome to just draw flowers all over it. So in the book we've got this gorgeous, how to start, there you go, an extra little bit of help. So a gorgeous array of brightly coloured watercolour paintings by yours truly. This one you'll probably recognise from the front of the book. And it's just a series of joyful, relaxing colours, and as well as the sort of full pages, we've also got some miniatures, because I love miniatures, and I just can imagine doing patterns on these pots, creating all sorts of interesting leaves, but also maybe I might pop them on a shelf, I might pop them on a bookcase in someone's house. Like, that's what I really love about this, is the possibilities are endless. And in the slightly more sort of abstract and loose ones, you might be able to see sort of different things. Let me see if I can find, okay, so here we go. Here's a page that's a little more loose and wild. In fact, this is the one that we've all been downloading and having a go at. So you can see it's a fantastic range of different things for you. Anyway, I am going to stop there because I don't want to show you everything and spoil the surprise. But Draw Your Way Botanical Watercolour, I'm so thrilled with it. It's been such an amazing experience to do, and seeing when I tested it out on people just how their shoulders dropped, they relaxed, they were just engrossed, and it seems to be something really special. So make sure you pre-order your copy. Pre-order 2 copies, one for you and one for somebody else, and you will be glad you did. So let's get on with our glazing masterclass. So first of all, what on earth is glazing? Well, it is layering wet colour over dry colour. And I hear you say, well, Harriet, isn't that just layering? Well, no, it's slightly different. The word layering versus the word glazing. Now, I don't know about you, but I think of glazing, I think of a glazed donut. I think of that sort of it's almost like a slightly transparent filter, a tinted window, a transparent colour. Versus layering, I think of thick, heavy jumpers layering up in winter. So with that in mind, layering is solid, opaque colours, and glazing is transparent colour. And what happens when you glaze over a colour? You're actually creating new tones. You're almost doing a mix on the page. So let me explain. Here I've got a dry strip of lemon yellow and a dry strip of cadmium yellow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to glaze over the top with some different blue tones. So I've woken them up in my palette. I've got Prussian blue here. I'm going to make sure it's nice and transparent, nice and dilute. And if I just paint a strip over the top, look how we have created new shades. Of course, blue and yellow are meant to make green, but when you have a different kind of blue, a different kind of yellow, you're going to end up with different shades. So let's have a look at some of the other blues in my palette. I've got French ultramarine blue here. Nice and transparent over the top. We can see that we're creating some slightly different shades. And sometimes you're going to end up with some rather unexpected tones, maybe some slightly flat, grey, dull tones. And that will be if you have landed on two sort of more complementary colours, or you've also got warm and cold shades in your palette. There's a lot going on, and I don't know about you, but I have always been, well, I'm a self-taught painter for starters, and I've always been quite instinctive. I just like to paint lovely pictures. It's not something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, but I know a lot of us absolutely adore swatching, the science of the colours, the mixing. Oh, wow, that one's really fun. I really like that tone there. I've even got cobalt turquoise I'll give a try over the top of. But essentially, what we're going to do today is we're just going to have a play around and get to know the colours in our palette a little bit better. But you can see by trying 2 different yellows, 5 different blue tones, that in these crossover swatches, just that one there, see the difference between that and that. You can see that just by putting blue and green together, no, blue and yellow together to make green is just the start of the story. Another reason for differing results when it comes to glazing is because not all paints are created equal. There are differing levels of transparency to opaqueness, and you can find a lot of information on the labels of the tubes themselves. But each brand is slightly different, and what I've done is I've just gone through my big box of watercolour paints to see what I can find out. Now also, a quick Google will also give you a list of the more transparent and best for glazing, therefore, paints. And I spotted that Permanent Rose was a really good transparent one. So if we have a look at my Winsor & Newton professional watercolour Permanent Rose tube, on the back there is a little square here, and that is what I'm looking for when I'm trying to find out about transparency. So if I pop that one there, you can see it's an empty square. If I take my Payne's Grey from the same brand, there you see the square is just cut in half down the diagonal, and that is to show you that it is semi-transparent. It is more opaque than this one. Now, I've sort of been looking through the different tubes, and we have different things in the squares to help us. So this is all Winsor & Newton, so that's kind of helpful. But then, what about other brands? Well, this is a Cass Art own brand paint. It doesn't have a square, but what it does have is a little clue, very helpfully up there saying transparent. Whereas if you compare it to this one here, that says opaque. So what I'm not telling you to disregard opaque paint entirely for glazing, but you will find it just a little bit heavier and thicker, and therefore it's a good idea if you want to use it in this experiment is to put your opaque paint down first, and then your more transparent colours will go really nicely over the top. What else have we got? Oh, look at this. This is a very special last tube in my possession of my Daler Rowney Artist's Watercolour Sap Green. It's so precious, I feel I should put it in a little glass cabinet. But for now, it's out the glass cabinet, and you can see here it says transparent on the front of it. This one also says transparent, so that's a really helpful clue for me as well, whereas some of these it's less obvious. But what I have found is that you can go online, especially with Daniel Smith colours, and they will give you just that little bit more information. So there's a lot going on with these tubes of paint, and what I never want to do is overload us with too much information. So I've decided to simplify things, take out the colours that I can't find anything any information on, and I've left myself with colours that I love to use, and we are going to create a lovely little colour glazing chart. I've created this little set of squares, and you can download it for free on my website, so head to the episode notes below for the link. And I've got myself a lovely flathead one-stroke brush, which is going to be really perfect for painting nice and neatly in the squares. So along one side here, I've got yellows through sort of ochre-y, browny, pinky, red tones that I find are inherently lighter than the colours I've got. I've got greens, blues down into Payne's grey. And what I'm going to do first is I am going to paint up each column swatches of the one colour. So lemon yellow all the way up, raw sienna all the way up. And I want to try to maintain a consistent sort of dilution of paint. So I will show you that in a second. But we're going to fill in from this way first. You could also put a swatch of the clean colour on its own there before you write it in. Then we let that dry 100% before painting a glaze of these colours over the top, and we'll have a lovely chart that's going to be really helpful for creating paintings in future. You must make sure that your brush is clean before you start doing this. So I've put some colour into my palette, adding some water, just getting it really nicely mixed up. And yeah, we can fill in the full column with this lemon yellow. So I'm just coming to the last swatch, and it's funny, I was so convinced this was a purple. It's actually an ultramarine blue, but I think let's pop it in this end anyway, because it's always useful to see what happens when you've got different tones from the same colour glazing with one another. If you find that you've got too much water on the page, you can always sort of pick a little bit up from one swatch, carry it over to the other one. So it's vitally important that that is 100% dry. I've written down there what the colours are, and I've also put in little initials of the brand because I do use a range of brands. Oh, and here's Sap Green by Daler Rowney. It's very good, it's very nice. And I'm going to have it go across the top here. So making sure it's nicely dilute. And here we go. The other reason why it's a good idea to use a large brush is even when the colour is dry underneath, you want to try and glaze in as few brush strokes as possible to ensure that there is the smallest chance of any of the underneath colour being swept up with your brush and they're becoming a mix on the page rather than a glazed layer. Now in this little section here where we've got the ready pinks, of course green is the complementary colour, so what we're getting is a really sort of muted version of those colours, so that's quite useful to know. You can use complementary colours as shadow options, not just my good old Payne's Grey Burnt Sienna mix. There we go, and I'm just using my slightly smaller one-stroke brush to create the little swatch on the side there. So I've just got one row left to do, and it's Payne's Grey. So Payne's Grey is deep, dark and very intense, so, and of course it's only semi-transparent, so we're probably expecting quite an impactful shade over the top, but let's see. That's a really lovely colour. And I'm really enjoying how alizarin crimson is really muting down these blues and greens into really interesting burgundy tones. That's quite interesting there, that Payne's Grey on Opera Rose is making still quite a vibrant pinky purple. It seems to be a good purple, which is quite surprising. Okay, and then because there is, oh, we can hear Crumble barking outside. Because there is quite a bit of blue in my Payne's Grey, I wasn't surprised to see these greenish finishes over the yellows. Of course, you could choose any combination of colours you wanted for your glazing chart, but what this is showing us is just a really handy reference for some very sort of, well, some surprises. I really, really love this colour here. I think that's quite interesting. Alizarin crimson just seems to sort of zap these of any of their vibrance. Then within the pinks and things we get a really lovely range of quite similar rather sort of plummy purpley tones, but you can see that through glazing you get this amazing array of new colours that you didn't have in your palette. So if you've never tried glazing before, or maybe you've been doing it but haven't necessarily been aware that what you're doing is glazing, download a free template and just play around with your colours, get to know your colours some more, because you'll unlock a whole load of new colours in your palette. And the big difference, I think, with glazing versus simply mixing two wet colours together and creating a new colour is the vibrant and luminous quality to some of these colours. I'm really struck by that, and I think that's so interesting that you sort of allow both colours to fully form and develop by allowing one to dry and then glazing over the top with the translucent version of the other. So I hope this has been helpful, and of course if you've got any further questions, don't forget to comment in the comment section below. But liking the video and subscribing to the channel is just brilliant, makes us more visible for everyone to spread the joy of watercolour. And of course, once you've had a go at some of these drills and exercises, why not try one of our fully fledged tutorials and paint something lovely.